Yeah, we can start. I guess we're at
Yes,
the half
let's
past.
start.
Cool. So yes, thanks everyone for joining and thank you for having me. So I'm going to be speaking about my journey as a Power Platform Solutions architect. The title, of course, there is no formula to becoming a solutions architect in the Power Platform. However, the way I'm going to run through this talk is kind of talking about three things. If I can get to the next. My mouse has gone funny. Yeah. So I'm going to break it into these three different elements. So the first being my personal journey, how I came across the Power Platform in particular. And then secondly, I'm going to show what the Power Platform is, how we can use it. So in particular, I'm going to show some Power BI elements, some Power Apps, some Power Automate. As being a solutions architect in the Power Platform is all about understanding how all the different tools work together and communicate to each other. So it's really important to be able to kind of develop and understand the pros and cons and when you would use the different tooling. And then thirdly, I'm going to look at certifications because that's one way in which you can start a journey like this. And it's something that I've done a lot of in the last 6 months. I actually have done all the Power Platform certifications there are now. So I'll be running through some tips on that as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a small group. So if there's any questions, please put them in the chat. If there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, something you're interested in the Power Platform, I'm very happy to adapt as well. Depending on what people want to hear. So happy to do that as well. So please free to use the chat or just come off mute and talk. So starting with my journey. So I've actually done this on a Power App. And just because it's just like a nice interface really, instead of using a PowerPoint. So this is all about me. So I started off, I studied Morse at the University of Warwick. Morse stands for Maths, Operational Research, Statistics and Economics. I then went on to do a graduate program at BT, which is basically our telecoms here. And while I was there, I was a data analyst, and it was like a grad job, kind of unspecific, quite generic in terms of the kind of stuff I was doing, but I was working in data. While I was there, I got to a point where I wanted to find my next job, and I came across through a recruitment company, like anything. You fall into your career. I'm sure a lot of us can agree in that. I went to a recruitment company and said, I want to change jobs. I like data. And I don't think I gave them many other criteria for what I was looking for. I was very open to any industry. I just knew I liked data. So at Heathrow, they had introduced the Power Platform there. And especially for their kind of analysts and data people as they were, I think my official title was like an operations intelligence analyst. And so while I was in that analyst role, I started learning Power BI, I started learning Power Apps, started learning Power Automate. PVA was not around at that time, although it's on the screen right here just to show what the Power Platform is today. And I think what really pushed me to be where I am today is that I realized through learning about the Power Platform that I made bits of my job obsolete. So I no longer had to do lots of number crunching or lots of Excel manipulation. But what it did mean is that I could then concentrate on the actual insight and the thing that means most to the business. So understanding the numbers. So now that I had reporting that would generate by itself, I had Power Apps that would collect data, I could focus on really just applying myself to what I was seeing in the reports. Of course, that human element is so necessary, which is great. And And then my next step was, again, similar to when I'd left BT. I knew that I now loved the Power Platform. And what was key now in my next role is that that was the main focus of my role, whereas at Heathrow, it was just a supporting mechanism. So I came across Altius, and again, recruitment company helped me with that again. So this time my criteria was I really like the Power Platform. And actually, in particular, I said at that time, I want to develop Power BI reports. That was my criteria now, and that's what I was looking for. And I came across Altius, and Altius then got acquired by Avanade, which is why it's written there as Altius/Avanade. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to speak at events, to share my knowledge, and eventually I got awarded the MVP as well. And that's really helped. It's opened a lot of doors for me, and I'm really grateful for having been given that title. And I also have my own YouTube channel, which I have had for about just over a year now, called Jese's Power Channel, where I post weekly when I can. And I essentially post on everything Power Platform. So I'm not just posting on Power BI or Power Automate or Power Apps. It's everything. So, why am I telling you all of this? The main thing is it's that breadth of kind of sharing and that community that's also helped me in becoming this solutions architect. As a developer who works only in one of these tools, it can be a little bit more difficult to get to that architect's level. I guess the other thing is in the Power Platform, there's still a bit of a divide between Power BI and the rest of the stack. And bridging those gaps can be quite difficult. And not many people are able to do that. However, through the community sharing and I guess luck as well, I was lucky and fortunate enough, and it was scary to be put on projects where I had to develop both, and that really has brought me to where I am today. So before I kind of go into like the main stack, I just wanted to give a few little like cards really on like how my mantra of how I approach my work life is choose a job you will love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. So yeah, always keep learning. Make sure you challenge yourself. Getting yourself a mentor can help. Work-life balance is important. Get feedback often. Having tangible goals. Help others. Exams and accreditations, which we're going to cover a bit later. And the power of your online profile. There's no single formula to see what it's like to be a solutions architect or become one. But this is my advice for anyone that's pursuing that kind of technology career. Okay, so that was kind of intro about me. I'm going to spend a bit of time now looking at the entire suite of the Power Platform and how it all ties together and what we can learn from that. And what I will do is I will talk about the different things that do come to me as a solutions architect and where I add value with the whole suite of technology. So this is a use case that I've come up with to take you on that journey, essentially. So this is using the Power Platform to do financial forecasting. So what I'm about to show you is a Power BI report. And from that Power BI report, we have a Power App that's embedded, which can submit a forecast to a SharePoint list. And then from there, I'm also going to show you Power Automate, which refreshes the Power BI report. So those symbols there show that I'm going to use Power BI, I'm going to use Power Apps. I have SharePoint as a backend as well in the demo that I'll show you. And I also have Power Automate as well. So this is a Power BI report, and it's a financial data set. And essentially, in short, there are some accounts within our financial data set, and they have some actuals against them. And then we have a Power App. So this Power App is embedded in the Power BI report, and we can give this this forecast. I'm saying that this is my forecast for this account line. So I've kept it very simple for this demo. So it's either I think that it's going to be 20% less, or it's going to be 20% more, or etc. All the numbers that you see on the screen. So if I go through and submit this and I say, right, I think next year commission is going to be high, everything is going to be high. So I'm just making my forecast really big here. I'll just make that, well, I'll make some of them a bit lower. And I'm just going to scroll down. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, once I save this forecast, I have a Power App, Power Automate in the background, which essentially uses these two steps to refresh this data set, which is Finance Power BI V2. So that's the name of the data set. And where that is being triggered is in that button itself. So within this button, Save Forecast, I'm actually calling that Power Automate to trigger the refresh. So what we can see is if I go back now and to the run history, you can see 47 seconds ago, which is about the time that I clicked it, it started refreshing this data set. If I come back here to Power BI now, I can see that refresh happening. So if I go into the data set and I look at the scheduled refresh, I can see that about a minute ago, 20 seconds ago, it just refreshed via the API. So if I now come back into my report, and I didn't actually add any commentary there this time, and I come back into my graphical, we can actually see all of our forecasts in this view now. So the actuals are actually above forecast, and that's because I think some of the values I chose, although I did go higher, so I'm surprised. But essentially that forecast has now it's changed. It has now come through. So you see those have changed. So just to show you a little bit about the Power App, as I said, here is where the that flow is being called. So you see here that I'm connecting to this Power Automate to refresh my data set. So as a solutions architect, quite often a company will come to me or come to us with kind of problems which require thought and use to decide when is the best time to use these different parts of the Power Platform. So if I now step through kind of the demo again, but thinking about use cases and when it would be useful and the kind of thought process I would go behind, one thing to note is that whenever we architect a solution, we don't always talk about what a Power BI is or what an app is. We make it about the use case. So the use case might be, I want to report on my financial outgoings for the year. And that'll be the user story. In terms of how it's done, that'll be something separate. So typical use cases for Power BI is whenever we want to do reporting, whenever we want to show data that we don't want to necessarily read and write between. Typical use cases for Power Apps is always when we want to do that read and write, and we want users to have their input. And for Power Automate, of course, it's that workflow integration. So I'm just going to talk about the integration piece. just open this. And so yeah, that's the app that you just saw. Now, as a solution architect in the Power Platform, we need to think about the integration between Power BI and Power Apps as well, and how we can use them for our clients in the best possible way. So there's a few different ways that the Power Platform integrates between each other. So the first one that we've already seen is embedding that Power App visual into the Power BI report. And we have, you can see in this picture here that essentially in the desktop, we have this button that we can click. So when would we want to use this? We'd want to do this if we want to maybe apply a forecast or add actions when looking at a report. And that example, again, this is another example where we've got another app here within this Power BI report. The Power Automate one that we saw just now. So when we want to do this, well, if we want to refresh the data set as we saw, then we may wish to use the Power Automate. And this is that button here. So it's just a different example, which shows the flow in this area here. We may also wish to show the tile in Power Apps, so you can also go the other way. So if I show you an example of that as well, within here. So this is another example where we can see the integration between the different elements. Just open that up quickly. Oops. And this is how we bring a Power BI tile into Power Apps. As a solutions architect, it's important to know when the different elements can interact with each other. So you see here, I've got this tile that's slowly loading, and this is showing the Power BI tile in here. So a use case for this, so going back to the slide for a second, is, for example, when, and I've done this with clients before, when they wanted to essentially be able to see some data which would then allow them to create actions. So it was like a operational report where they would see a metric, and then from those metrics, every quarter, kind of like a business review, they would come in and be able to add some actions against data that they could see. We can also show the entire report as well in Power Apps. So it's useful to know when it would be good to do that. Okay, so I hope that's given you an idea of how the different elements work and how it's important to know all the various elements of the Power Platform. I haven't touched on everything. We have Power Virtual Agents as well. We have Dataverse as well. So I can show you some tables actually, be useful. So it's important as a solutions architect to know how to create tables, to create relationships between tables, and to be able to connect the backend system as well. So any questions on kind of Power Platform tooling or anything I've spoken about so far? Otherwise, I'll have a look at the certifications piece.
Let's see, there's no questions in the chat. I just added your YouTube page in the chat.
Yeah.
So I have one question. If you want to start up with this Power Platform and everything, where would you start? Because I remember Nicole Enders gave us some advice on how to begin.
Yeah. So I might be able to cover off some of it in the certifications piece, but that's one element. So certifications are helpful, but I guess my number one advice is to create a portfolio of work. So for those different elements that I showed on the screen, then it's hard to start with everything in one go. But if you look into the Power BI, you look into the Power Apps, just picking two to start with, because those are the kind of bigger ones perhaps. Learning how to use that tooling, attending user groups, and creating a portfolio is a great way to start. Ludwig, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question related to your, I think it was the Power BI with the Power App demonstration where you make the forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first question is, where did you get this Power BI data? Is this from a customer database, or where did you get this one from?
It's actually an open source data that I can probably just send you. So it was someone called Rishi Sapra, who I work with. He had a financial data set, and it is on the internet, so I'm pretty sure we can find it. But yeah, I can put it in the chat. I can't find it straight away, but yeah, I can dig it out. And it's a zip file that you can download. And he was kind enough to give me this data set. In terms of finding data, though, it can be a tricky thing sometimes. It's just a lot of Googling. And I have created my own data sets as well in the past.
Yeah, but if we stay at this example, I find this very interesting because you basically can create many kind of forecasts. And what I want to know, or what I'm interested in, is how can you integrate something like including circular patterns. So let's say, okay, I have an income statement. I want to make a forecast, and I know in August I'm having holidays, so therefore my sales will go down in August. Is this something we can integrate with these Power Apps, or would this be something where you say is a bit complex?
So what do you mean by that? We have like a modeling pattern that we want to apply. Is that right?
Yeah. Just imagine the income statement is for the whole year. Yeah, let's say 2020.
Yeah.
Now we are in 2021. And let's say in December is the holiday season, nobody works.
Yep.
So can you kind of incorporate these fluctuations into that?
Yeah, definitely. You can set up rules to define that. I mean, the other thing you could do is that because Power Automate is able to go in and do like workflow automation, you could probably set up a flow that says, let's say like a scheduled cloud flow that says, every December, apply these rules to the data, or reduce, let's say the I don't know a good example for December, but let's say sales, we are going to forecast every December that it will go down by 20%, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, cool. I think there's a pretty interesting integration scenario. Thanks.
No worries. And this is the data set that I used, which I've just put in the chat. So you can actually just download this and start playing with it. And actually, the demo that I just did, I did a very short version of it. But there is a slightly longer, I think it's 20 or 30-minute version that you can also have a look at. And that's absolutely huge. But yeah, hopefully you can get to that link. Any other questions? I just want to make sure that this is like relevant and useful for people. So I'm happy to take any questions on the Power Platform. And then we can have a look at certifications. Cool.
I'm curious a little bit about how you bring in security. What I mean with security. When you, for example, have forecasting, there is very likely approval steps. Maybe you have a kind of budgeting cycle in it.
Yep.
Where you would recommend to grab the information for approvals from. Is it an HR line approval? Is it a completely different rule where you have approvals from? Where you would, when you build this from scratch, pick the rules up for that?
Okay, so to begin with, you can make approvals in in Flow again, so you can do approvals within here. Why am I not seeing it here though? Action items, approvals. So that's something that's inbuilt in terms of the technology. Now, in terms of who that would be and the security elements, that's something that we would do upfront when architecting a solution. So the kind of things that we would be considering, stay on one screen, is when we look at the user stories and we do some business analysis, security will essentially be something that we would consider. So one element is its approvals, which I've showed you here. Within Dataverse, so the tables, we can set up business rules. And within the admin center, this is specifically for Power Platform being Power Apps and Power Automate, doesn't necessarily cover Power BI in these sections. There are a lot of kind of security roles and things that we can set up to meet the requirements of the client. So I've just gone into the admin center here, and I just want to point out that within users and permissions, I have security roles, I have teams that I can give certain permissions to, and users. And there is a lot of security that I could be applying. So if I go through to, let's say, my name, it does take a little while to open, so it might not open straight away. I think there's hundreds of different security conditions that I could put on my profile to control my access. And then within Power BI, we can do role level security, and we can do a lot of security on the workspaces as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different elements. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think I know everything how you approach that. Perfect.
Great. Any others? Awesome. See, I'm intrigued. Like, has anyone taken any Microsoft certifications? You could put your hand up.
Where's the hand down button?
Hand down is just nothing. So you haven't taken any then. Cool. Awesome. Has anyone done any of the Power Platform certification? So those are the ones listed here. You keep your hand up. Awesome. Which one have you done? Jonas? Is it? Not sure if I'm saying that right. PL200. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to run through this. I'm also going to speak about, not just as a developer, because as a developer, as a solutions architect, I have done all of them. It's really important for me to know everything. Certifications aren't massively necessary. They're nice to have. It's useful to validate your skills, but you don't need to do them, I guess, is one of the things I wanted to point out. But equally, if you are working with the Power Platform, it can be very useful to do some of the more foundation ones. So in particular, I'm just going to come back to this screen first. Doing your fundamentals PL900 will just give you that understanding of the platform and how we can use it and the use cases and how to use it within your own organization or externally. So it's not necessary that you have to do all of these at all. So yeah, so going back to why we do them in the first place, I've covered off a few of them here. So change career track. The Power Platform is a very, open kind of forum where a lot of people do change careers and come to the Power Platform, which I find amazing. You might want to do it just because of interest. It's quite nice to achieve something that gives you a little certificate and a badge. You don't get a physical certificate, but you do get badges, which is nice online. Improving your career prospects. Stay current. Power Platform is always changing, and these exams are always changing to learn new things. And you might meet new people by doing this. There are study groups out there, which can be nice to get into. So run through of the different certifications we have within the Power Platform. We have the Data Analyst Associate, which is all about preparing and modeling data. And it has a lot of Power BI elements within there. So if it is the case that your organization is quite invested in Power BI, and maybe that's the only kind of element that you're exposed to currently, you might wish to do that to validate your skills. You always learn something during these exams, and it may be stuff that's kind of unique that you may not come across unless you do these exams as well. You've then got the PL 900, which is Power Platform Fundamentals, which I mentioned. And then you've got the Power PL 100, which is the Maker Associate. So this is now getting more into creating solutions and designing them as well. So it's not just about the making part. And then you've got the Functional Consultant, which is really interesting because these are now about kind of functional requirements, non-functional requirements, solution design, thinking about security when doing it. And as you build up, you have then the Power Platform Developer Associate. And as the name suggests, this is quite developer focused. There are questions about some of the kind of coding languages that we see in the Power Platform. It's interesting because the Power Platform is marketed as a low-code, no-code platform. And it is to begin with, and it can be to begin with, but it can also get very technical in terms of the coding languages that are used. So that exam covers that. And then you've got the Solution Architect Expert. So the reason I put this section in is my journey to becoming a solutions architect has also included not just doing these exams, but the knowledge behind them. So, building up, it kind of mirrors my journey in a way, as I started off very much in Power BI and then started making stuff, started being more of a consultant, so doing business analysis sometimes with clients, converting what they were saying into user stories, into technical designs, at times wearing more of a developer hat, learning how to write in Liquid, which is the language used in portals. And then obviously the architect work as well, which you can see a couple of words there. There's that requirements piece, how to architect a solution, how to implement a solution. Now, in terms of the certification path, you can see that on the screen. I'm going to cover this slide fairly quickly because it's quite straightforward. So you have the DA 100, PL 900. You don't have to do these in order, but this bit at the bottom is useful to know. So you have to take either the 200 or the 400 plus the 600 exam, and that gives you the Power Platform Solution Architect Expert qualification. So just to point out how that certification path works in the Power Platform. In terms of how you book these exams, you can take them at Pearson VUE at a centre, or you can take them at home. A couple of words about why you would kind of pick between the two. I've done both. I have taken them in an exam centre and I have taken them at home. What I found is that I prefer taking them at home. That might be a consequence of COVID, as previously, although I had the option to take them at home, I went to a test centre. But I prefer it because it's it's comfort of my own house, and I can prepare. I don't have to go anywhere. You do have someone watching you, which is a bit unnerving. So I remember once I did one of these exams at home, and I was just thinking. I had my hands here, and then my hands thinking, just trying to get into my head. And the kind of person watching me popped up and said, "Do not cover your face," and it was a bit strange. And I have heard stories of different things happening. Yeah, well, don't have a cat in the same room. That's probably good advice, because if the cat jumps across or you look at the cat, you could be accused of cheating. But yeah, I've heard different stories of someone's partner walking into the room and then them being disqualified because you can't have anyone in the room. So yeah, it's just something to think about, and it's not happened to me yet. No wired headphones, which is a really strange one because I definitely did at least one exam with a headset on, and it was fine. They told me to just take it off or something. Or no, I didn't have it on. I had to take it off. But then, yeah, after that, I just never even connected these Bluetooth headphones anymore. That's a bit on how you book them. You can schedule them with Pearson VUE, and right now there's as of, I think I put these slides together maybe a couple of days ago. There was a offer on for a lot less. I haven't actually checked today if it's still there, but I assume it would be. Okay. A word on how we can prepare for these lessons. These have been split into 3 different sections here. So self-study. So that question about how we get started, I think this can really help with the Power Platform. So you've got Microsoft Learn, which we can use online. There's community events to attend, just like these, Powerthon and different tracks that are happening. You've got study groups and partners, community material. So on Twitter, on all sorts of blog sites, we can find a lot of material to help. And there's some virtual training that you can access as well. If you kind of type that into Google, there's different things. Formal training, so learning partners do offer training sometimes. So it's worth checking kind of learning partner websites and checking your organization. The virtual training again, and some live events. And in terms of exam prep, we have all the Microsoft documentation. So what I mean by exam prep is, now that you've done your revision, how do we get ready for the exam? So within the Microsoft Docs, you can test yourself. So within Microsoft Learn, you do have questions at the end of each topic, which are quite good. And also, whenever you come across a good question or something, it's always worth just double checking the Microsoft documentation, because that will be most up to date. And Measure Up. Measure Up is a website that gives us access to exams. I find it extremely useful. I'm not paid by Measure Up or endorsed by Measure Up. I just really like it. And yeah, some organizations do give vouchers and stuff. So I'm fortunate enough to get some vouchers from Measure Up. So it's worth checking that with your company as well. So some top tips for exams. I always work backwards. So I often just book the exam and then just see what happens. It kind of forces me to revise. You can actually move an exam as well. I think it's 72 hours out or 48 hours out. I can't remember. Download the skills outline. So the skills outline gives you the view of what's in each of these exams. Go at your own pace. Don't compare yourself to anyone. If certifications and Power Platform is something you're interested in, it doesn't matter if you do one a year or one a month or one a day. It's your own learning. I create a learning calendar or a revision timetable. That's something I've always done. So if I know I'm going to do an exam in, say, 2 months, then I will break down the skills outline and make sure I'm learning everything from it. And to do that, I'm often using like YouTube videos and the Microsoft documents. And yeah, that comes on to this point about using a variety of materials. So don't just stick to one particular thing. Practice. Like online actual practice with the tooling. There's only so much we can learn by just reading documentation or watching videos. A lot of learning happens by doing. So, if you are learning about how, let's say, security roles work in the Power Platform, just like I was doing on the screen there, just start having a play and do some testing. And you can get developer accounts and test accounts to do that. It says here rubber duck. Rubber duck is basically a term which is we learn by teaching. So teach others, create your own study group and learn between each other, and learn to fail gracefully. I have failed a couple of exams. In fact, the solutions architect exam, I kept failing by a couple of points. Some of these exams have like very, very kind of confusing questions at times, and I wasn't cracking a few questions essentially. And at first, like in the first gigs, I think I probably failed 2 or 3 times in total. And the first time I failed, I was so upset. I was like, no, this is awful. But actually, you just like it's not the end of the world. The other thing I now do is I just don't tell anyone I'm taking it, which kind of helps. But it depends on your personality, because sometimes telling people that you're taking it means that you'll actually do it as well. So yeah, and there are a few resources here. So Cheryl Netley has a blog, which is called the BizApps blog, and on there she posts lots of stuff about certifications. Measure Up, which I mentioned, and maybe I'll paste these in the chat. And then my YouTube channel, I have a whole series on videos there, on certifications even. And okay, this is huge again. I don't know why it's so big, but I have to do. And Microsoft Learn as well, where all the different like courses are on there as well to learn everything. So that's pretty much all I had to cover. As I said, there's no formula to becoming a solutions architect, but hopefully some of that helps. Any questions from anyone?
Do we have something in the chat?
I don't think so.
We still have a couple of minutes, so if you have questions, use the time. That was really insightful. I like it a lot, especially the demos.